when the words of a legend were turned against her. Jasmine Crockett faced a moment that would define her career. The chamber fell silent, as if the air itself had been sucked from the room. Every eye turned, every camera lens fixed on her, capturing not just a politician, but a person under the weight of history. On the screen behind her, the unmistakable voice of Ruth Bader Ginsburg echoed, crisp and authoritative. The words meant to inspire, now wielded like a challenge. A ripple of murmurs spread across the audience. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others leaned in, hungry for the drama that had already begun to unfold. The clip, carefully chosen and strategically timed, landed with the force of a gavel striking the bench. Journalists instinctively raised their cameras. Reporters scribbled furiously. Phones hovered in the air, ready to immortalize a moment that could dominate social media for hours, days, perhaps even weeks. Crockett's eyes never wavered. There was no flinch, no twitch, only a quiet, measured calm that belied the tension around her. The weight of expectation pressed down, not just from those in the room, but from millions watching from their homes, their timelines filled with anticipation and judgment. Every heartbeat seemed amplified, every second stretched into eternity. And yet, behind that calm exterior, a storm was forming, one that would test every ounce of her resolve, every lesson she had learned in the courtroom and beyond. The world waited. Would she falter? Or would she transform this attack into an unforgettable statement of dignity and power? But the stakes behind that clip were far greater than anyone realized. This was more than a single clip. It was a test of legacy, a collision between history and the present, and a public reckoning with what leadership truly demanded. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's words carried weight that spanned generations, carefully chosen, meticulously argued, and forever etched into the conscience of the nation. To have them played back as a weapon in a political debate was audacious. It was a reminder that precedent could be twisted, that even the most revered voices could be repurposed to undermine those who followed in their footsteps. For Jasmine Crockett, the pressure was palpable. As a young Black congresswoman navigating the high-stakes corridors of power, every gesture, every word, every pause would be dissected, amplified, and replayed across the country. Her identity, her heritage, her very presence in the chamber was a statement. And now, that presence was being challenged in real time, under the unforgiving scrutiny of a nation watching. One misstep could shift perception, weaken credibility, and give critics a narrative they had long been eager to tell. Yet, Crockett's calm was her armor. While whispers and side glances suggested tension, she stood composed, a silent defiance radiating from her posture. The contrast could not have been more dramatic. One side steeped in smug confidence, wielding history as a sword, the other rooted in integrity, embodying the dignity and thoughtfulness that had guided her career. Every second she held herself steady increased the suspense, each pause a deliberate defiance of expectation. Outside the chamber, the stakes were already rippling. News feeds buzzed with anticipation. Pundits speculated on strategy, and social media scrolled relentlessly, hungry for the next viral moment. Audiences weren't just watching a debate. They were witnessing a clash of ideals, a confrontation that would echo through discussions of justice, representation, and power. Every eye glued to the screen sensed it. What happened next would leave social media in a frenzy, and pundits scrambling for answers, dissecting tone, timing, and substance with feverish intensity. And as the room held its collective breath, it became clear that this was no ordinary exchange. This was a moment where history, perception, and principle collided. A storm was gathering, and only one question remained. How would Jasmine Crockett navigate the forces aligned against her? To understand the weight of the moment, we need to see the forces aligned against her. The figure behind the clip was no stranger to spectacle. Years of political maneuvering had honed an instinct for theatrics, a talent for turning opportunity into a stage. To their allies, it was brilliance. To their opponents, a calculated arrogance. Every public appearance, every carefully timed statement seemed designed to provoke, to dominate, to unsettle. They thrived on control, on the subtle thrill of forcing others into reactive, defensive positions. And in this chamber, with millions watching, they believed they had found another perfect moment to assert superiority. Their career was littered with examples of similar tactics. There was the televised exchange where a rising challenger was humiliated by a single, pointed remark. The committee hearing where they weaponized obscure precedent to make a rival appear incompetent. The sound bites, meticulously edited, were designed to circulate endlessly, shaping narratives in social media threads and evening news panels alike. History seemed to bend around their will, a tool to elevate themselves and diminish those who dared oppose them. In short, they were the master of the political ambush. And yet, for all their experience, there was a flaw that few dared to name: overconfidence. It lingered in their posture, in the knowing smirk that often accompanied an insult, in the way they leaned into the camera as if daring the world to disagree. They assumed mastery over perception, believing that preparation alone could manufacture inevitability. What they failed to account for, however, was that history, dignity, and quiet strength could not be staged, could not be predicted, could not be cornered. As the clip played against Jasmine Crockett, their eyes sparkled with the satisfaction of a calculated strike. They thought this move would be a knockout, a public embarrassment broadcast for all to see. The audience, they assumed, would gasp in shock, record the moment, share it, and then turn the page to a familiar story. The young congresswoman undone by her own misstep. The room, the cameras, the social feeds, all tools to validate their strategy. Every detail, every second, had been choreographed to perfection. But there were cracks in the narrative they did not notice. The room's tension was mirrored by something deeper, a miscalculation of character. Jasmine Crockett had faced her own storms, had navigated prejudice, pressure, and politics with a calm that disarmed even the most seasoned observers. For all their planning, all their cunning, the assumption that theatrics could dominate substance would prove dangerously short-sighted. Even now, as the villain leaned back, savoring imagined victory, there was an unspoken truth in the room, one that they could not control. The real battle had just begun. They underestimated the force of quiet resolve, the power of dignity, the impact of a measured, unflappable response. And while the audience braced for spectacle, no one yet realized the depth of what was about to unfold. Yet the true test wasn't just public perception, it was personal resilience. Jasmine Crockett's path to this moment had been anything but ordinary. From her earliest days, she carried a sense of purpose, a quiet determination that seemed to grow stronger with every obstacle. Her career as a lawyer had been forged in the crucible of civil rights work, defending those whose voices had been ignored, silenced, or dismissed. Each case she took on, each brief she filed, was a testament not to ambition alone, but to principle, a commitment to justice that would follow her into the halls of power. Her rise in public service was equally defined by persistence and integrity. Crockett had spent years navigating systems stacked against her, advocating for policies that lifted communities rather than undermined them. She understood the weight of representation, that her presence in the chamber was more than a seat at the table. It was a symbol of progress, a reflection of the struggles and hopes of countless people who rarely saw themselves in positions of influence. And with that visibility came scrutiny, constant and unyielding, demanding a resilience few could sustain. Yet what set Crockett apart was not just her professional acumen. It was the calm that she carried into the storm. In every courtroom, every meeting, every debate, she had honed the ability to listen, to weigh facts and emotions before responding. There was no rush to spectacle, no reliance on theatrics. Her power lay in thoughtfulness, in timing, in the rare ability to make words land with impact because they were rooted in truth. When others sought to dominate with volume, she countered with clarity. When others attempted to intimidate, she remained grounded, letting integrity speak louder than anger or fear. Her life outside the spotlight had also shaped her readiness. Moments of personal sacrifice, late nights studying precedent, early mornings meeting constituents, evenings spent mentoring young lawyers, had built a foundation of discipline and empathy. She understood that leadership was not performed for applause. It was earned in the quiet moments when no one was watching. Each challenge she had faced, each setback she had turned into a lesson, had prepared her for the kind of test that the viral Ginsburg clip now represented. And there was an unspoken strength, a dignity woven through her presence that made her impossible to shake. People saw it in the tilt of her head, the calm in her eyes, the measured cadence of her speech. It was the kind of strength that did not demand recognition, but compelled it nonetheless. Every lesson she had learned, every obstacle she had overcome, every sacrifice she had made, would now be put to the ultimate test. The room hummed with tension, every eye flicking between the screens displaying Ruth Bader Ginsburg's voice and the figure seated before them. The clip had landed like a cannon blast, reverberating through the chamber. Whispers spread like wildfire. Journalists leaned forward, pens poised, cameras angled to catch the smallest reaction. The opposition smirked, certain that the moment would fracture Crockett's composure, certain that the carefully orchestrated display would yield the dramatic collapse they had envisioned. But Crockett remained unmoved. Her posture was calm, her expression controlled, a silent declaration that the weight of expectation would not dictate her response. She had faced scrutiny before, and each encounter had strengthened her resolve. The contrast could not have been more striking. The villain radiated confidence, a thinly veiled arrogance, while Crockett radiated poise, an almost magnetic calm that drew the attention of every observer, amplifying the suspense in the air. Questions came next, loaded and pointed, designed to unsettle. "How do you respond to the words of a justice whose legacy is untouchable?" one asked, the tone heavy with implication. Another leaned in, pressing for an answer that would sound like a concession, a falter, a misstep. The crowd sensed the stakes, not just a debate, but a confrontation that carried the weight of history, identity, and principle. Every syllable Crockett might utter had the potential to be dissected, to be taken out of context, to be amplified across millions of screens and timelines. As the back and forth continued, tension escalated. The opposition grew visibly frustrated, their smirk faltering as Crockett responded with measured confidence, answering point after point without losing composure. Each rebuttal, each pause, subtly undermined the carefully built narrative of intimidation. The audience began to lean in, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding. Social media notifications buzzed incessantly in the pockets and hands of viewers, capturing the drama in real time. And yet, the true crescendo had not yet arrived. The room held its collective breath, every whisper of movement amplified, every glance pregnant with anticipation. The villain, certain of their impending victory, did not notice the quiet shift in energy. Crockett's calm was not hesitation. It was preparation. It was the stillness before the storm, the moment before brilliance. And then, with the nation watching, she did something no one expected. The room fell into a tense, anticipatory silence. All eyes were on Jasmine Crockett, and the air felt almost electric, as though every heartbeat was amplified. The opposition had believed the Ginsburg clip would corner her, that the weight of history and expectation would make her stumble. But Crockett, in a gesture so subtle it could have gone unnoticed, leaned forward ever so slightly, meeting the gaze of the room with unshakable composure. Her calm was deliberate, a quiet assertion that she controlled the narrative now. She began, not with a rebuttal born of anger, but with a steady, measured voice that carried the authority of experience. Justice Ginsburg's words have always guided our country toward fairness, she said, each word deliberate, resonant, and unyielding. They inspire, they challenge, they remind us of our duty, not to be afraid of scrutiny, but to rise above it. The room shifted, leaning in. Cameras captured every subtle movement, the rise of an eyebrow, the nod of affirmation from allies, the flicker of doubt in the eyes of her opponent. Every pause was intentional, allowing the weight of her words to settle. Crockett referenced her own legal career, each anecdote a carefully placed testament to her capability. She spoke of the countless hours she had spent defending the vulnerable, representing clients silenced by systemic inequities, and navigating courts where the stakes were not just legal, but deeply human. Her story was a quiet thunder, a reminder that dignity was earned, not given, and that true authority came from consistent action and moral courage, not opportunistic theatrics. The chamber was captivated. Even the most skeptical observers were drawn into the rhythm of her reasoning, the cadence of someone who had walked the corridors of justice and emerged unshaken. The villain's confidence began to waver. Their smirk faltered, replaced by subtle shifts of unease. Every strategic advantage they had counted on seemed to dissolve under Crockett's composure. Where they had expected humiliation, they now faced undeniable mastery. Murmurs rippled through the audience, a wave of quiet astonishment that spread from one corner of the room to another. Social media cameras recorded every second, poised to amplify what would become a viral moment, a lesson in poise and principle for millions. Crockett's delivery built incrementally, layering her response with legal insight, historical context, and personal integrity. She reclaimed Ginsburg's authority not by confrontation, but by alignment, demonstrating that the words of a legend were not weapons to be wielded, but principles to be embodied. Her rebuttal was a masterclass in restraint and impact. She punctuated her points with pauses that felt like seconds stretched into eternity, letting the audience internalize the power of her argument. Every quiet gesture reinforced her message, confidence tempered with justice, intellect coupled with empathy. By now, the room was spellbound. Allies exchanged glances of admiration. Journalists scribbled furiously, capturing quotes that would be shared across countless feeds. Even the opposition seemed momentarily unmoored, their prior certainty crumbling under the weight of Crockett's clarity. The clip that had been intended as a weapon now seemed almost irrelevant, overshadowed by her commanding presence, by the moral and intellectual authority she radiated. And yet, she did not stop. She let the final lines land with gravity, each syllable a reminder of the responsibilities carried by those who hold power. Cameras lingered on her face, capturing the quiet triumph in her eyes, the subtle acknowledgement of victory without arrogance. Every reaction, the gasp, the nod, The shift in posture was magnified, contributing to the cinematic sweep of the moment. Social media notifications exploded as snippets were instantly shared, retweeted, and replayed, the moment immortalized for audiences hungry for heroes who could stand unwavering in the face of attack. By the end of her response, the world couldn't look away. The moment exploded beyond the chamber, spilling into timelines, feeds, and living rooms across the nation. Within seconds, clips of Crockett's poised, unflinching response began circulating like wildfire. Memes sprang up overnight, capturing her calm stare, her measured words, her subtle but undeniable dominance. Hashtags trended. #Crockett clapback, #dignity wins, #Ginsburg legacy reclaimed. Every retweet, share, and post amplified the drama, spreading the moment to millions who hadn't even witnessed the hearing live. FOMO gripped the country. Those who had not seen her response scrambled to watch, desperate not to miss a cultural instant that had already begun reshaping the conversation. Political analysts dissected her every phrase, some praising her strategy, others marveling at her command of history and law. Commentators debated the implications. How could one young congresswoman turn a high-profile ambush into a moment of inspiration? Celebrities weighed in, posting snippets of her calm rebuttal, applauding her courage, and framing it as a lesson in poise under pressure. The narrative was clear. Jasmine Crockett had not just survived a political attack, she had turned it into a defining statement, a demonstration of moral authority. Meanwhile, the villain struggled to regain footing. What had been intended as a knockout now looked like a miscalculation, a rare crack in an otherwise calculated persona. Smiles faltered, smugness faded, and attempts to reassert control felt forced and hollow. Every attempt to redirect the conversation was met with reminders of Crockett's composed mastery, her dignity shining through every replay and commentary. The tables had turned, and the once confident provocateur now faced a public reckoning of their own making. The ripple effect extended beyond the individuals involved. Conversations about representation, justice, and the power of measured strength dominated headlines and social feeds. Young lawyers and activists shared Crockett's words as examples of how preparation, courage, and calm could overcome intimidation. Her response became a blueprint, a modern case study in turning pressure into performance, in reframing attacks into affirmation. Social media wasn't just buzzing. It was creating a movement of admiration, of solidarity, of validation for those who had long been underestimated or dismissed. And while the digital world erupted, the real-world implications were equally profound. Calls from colleagues, invitations to speak, and the surge in public support underscored the moment's significance. The viral clip was no longer just a snippet. It had become a cultural touchstone, a defining marker in Crockett's journey. But beyond the viral clips and tweets, the true lesson was just beginning to unfold. In the end, the debate was more than a viral moment. It was a lesson in principle, a demonstration of what true leadership looks like when tested by pressure, scrutiny, and the weight of history. Jasmine Crockett's response did not rely on theatrics or anger. It relied on integrity, preparation, and the unshakable understanding that dignity is a far more potent weapon than intimidation. In that room, under the gaze of millions, she reframed confrontation into affirmation, proving that composure and clarity could transform even the most aggressive challenge into a defining triumph. Her words, carefully chosen and rooted in both legal precedent and lived experience, reminded the nation that courage is quiet, deliberate, and consistent. She did not need to shout over the opposition. She did not need to perform for applause. The strength lay in her calm, in the precision of her reasoning, in the moral clarity that underpinned every statement. Across screens and social feeds, viewers felt it. The admiration, the awe, the inspiration of watching someone meet adversity with grace rather than reaction. Crockett's victory was also a victory for values long overshadowed by spectacle. Justice over posturing, principle over showmanship, legacy over short-term gain. The power of representation, the impact of preparation, and the enduring resonance of dignity were on full display. In reframing the viral attack, she offered not just a political lesson, but a universal one. That standing firm in truth and character can outshine even the most calculated attempts at humiliation. The audience in the chamber erupted in applause, the sound swelling and echoing as if the walls themselves recognized the significance of the moment. Social media feeds flooded with screenshots, clips, and commentary, the digital applause matching the physical one in intensity. Each like, share, and retweet amplified not just the moment, but the message. Integrity matters, and the quiet strength of principled leadership is unforgettable. Crockett's composed demeanor lingered on camera, a slow zoom capturing her calm reflection after the storm. It was an image that would circulate for months, a symbol of resilience and purpose. She had faced a tactical ambush and turned it into a masterclass in poise and empowerment. For viewers, the takeaway was clear. Adversity is inevitable, but dignity, preparation, and unwavering commitment to justice define how we rise above it. In that single exchange, Crockett transformed what could have been a moment of vulnerability into a cultural touchstone, a reminder that true leadership shines brightest under pressure, and that integrity, once demonstrated, leaves an imprint far deeper than any fleeting insult. Jasmine Crockett's response was more than a rebuttal. It was a reminder that dignity and preparation are stronger than any attempt at manipulation. In a world often obsessed with spectacle and sound bites, her calm, principled stance showed that true power lies in clarity, courage, and conviction. This moment, amplified across social media and news cycles, proved that character outlasts theatrics, and that integrity under pressure resonates far beyond the walls of any chamber. Now the story is not just hers. It belongs to everyone watching. It belongs to those who have faced impossible odds, who have felt underestimated, or who have ever been told that their voice is too quiet, too young, or too different to matter. Crockett's poise is a blueprint, a lesson that careful preparation, moral clarity, and unwavering confidence can transform challenge into triumph. If this moment inspired you, share it. Talk about it. Let others see how courage meets opportunity, how dignity overcomes intimidation. Subscribe to join a community that celebrates leaders who rise with integrity, who confront adversity with grace, and who remind us all of the power of principled action. Engage in the conversation, amplify voices that uplift, and be part of a movement that values substance over spectacle. And as the world continues to replay the clip, remember this. When the words of a legend were turned against her, Jasmine Crockett didn't just respond. She redefined what it means to stand with courage, poise, and unwavering dignity. The lesson is clear, and it is one the world will not soon forget.